Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Fourth in Frames, the flagship podcast here at fantasyandframes.com. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards, and this week we're talking about the NFC East. Before we get into all that, let's go around the frames and say hello to everybody. We're going to go counterclockwise this week and talk to the person who's been awake the longest today, or should I say going into tomorrow. Bill Mustafa coming in, joining us all the way from the UK. Dude, how are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good. It's Double Espresso seems to be holding me through 2 episodes, so we're good. We're good.
Very nice, very nice. Keith Fleming, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing good, man. How about yourself?
Doing all right, do it. Keith is the host of the Daily Fix podcast with Joe Matz, our DFS podcast here at Fantasy and Frames. We cannot wait for the season to start so these guys can go do their thing. They have a great way of breaking down plays for your DFS lineup each week. And just wait, enjoy, reap the rewards. We can't wait to get those guys going. Mr. Nate Markham, host of Shoot the Gap. How are you doing, my friend?
Very well. Thank you for asking. What's up, everybody? Good to see you all.
And, of course, we have the host of Dynasty 365. If you all were watching last hour, you saw us, saw all of our familiar faces. So, Tyler, how you doing, my friend?
I am wonderful. I am really hoping that Bill just keeps this going, and by the time week 3 rolls around, he's just going to be drinking a pint glass of espresso.
We'll have to nail you over like a Keurig or something, or some type of espresso machine at this point. So for those who are back listening, we hope you went to your local podcast platform and rate, review, to subscribe to us. Let us know what we're doing right. Let us know what we need to work on. We are here for you to give you all the good fantasy football information that we can from all the different areas, whether it's Redraft or Dynasty or IDP or DFS. That's why we have all of the department heads here to help out with that. But, this is draft season for Redraft, where we talked about the AFC East last week, and we put out our AFC East preview over at fantasyandframes.com, our Bible of the AFC East. And then this week we put out our Bible of the NFC East. So go check that out. Check out every single player, fantasy relevant player on offense and an IDP for the NFC East. So we'll be talking about that today. And before we get into today's topic, let's go over some news and notes here. We'll keep this kind of short and sweet. Well, I guess there's no sweetness to it. Let's just keep it short, but real. Deshaun Watson suspended 6 games currently as it stands. The NFL is appealing to potentially suspend him for a year, if not indefinitely. All sorts of thoughts, all sorts of feelings, a lot of anger, disappointment. I would say ran rampant through the fantasy football community as well as the football community versus just general people who have a say in this situation that's going on here with the 30-plus allegations. At the end of the day, whether we're talking about football, I don't think talking about football with regards to Deshaun Watson really means anything, even though we're talking about fantasy football. All I care about, and I think a lot of us just need to refocus our attention, is that the people who have been harmed in this situation and these allegations, that they're taken care of in some capacity, because those are the true victims, not the fantasy football managers, not the NFL fans. No, it is these 34-plus women who have come forward to report allegations of sexual misconduct regarding Deshaun Watson. So I hope someone out there, some entity out there, is looking after their best interest and their well-being, because those are the people who are really suffering, and I hope that they get their due. Going over to latest news when it comes to player contracts. Man, can I hire the agent of DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, AJ Brown, and Terry McLaurin? Because this guy got all of his wide receivers 3 years, $72 million, with the exception of AJ Brown, who got $100 million. Amazing contract here for DK Metcalf. He got the deal he wanted. I have mixed feelings about this contract. The 3-year thing, that's where it gets me. It's one of those things where I feel like all these players that are taking these short-term contracts for a lot of money, a lot of guaranteed money, that's their way of like accepting that I'm getting paid for work done. which is great, fantastic. Get as much money as you can. Nothing is truly ever guaranteed in the NFL. Great for you. But in terms of, if you're a fan of this team, or you're a fan of this player, or you're a fan of their fantasy football outcome, this does nothing for you, I think. Because who's throwing the ball to DK Metcalf? Is it Drew Lock? Is it Geno Smith? Does it even matter? And we don't know what they're doing for the long term. So it is a head scratcher in terms of what's going on there. Deebo Samuel, he also got paid. Very interesting bonus structure to his contract. And Nate, I'll start with you here. A lot of the talk about his angst towards the 49ers was that he didn't want to be used a lot in the running game because he was getting beat up a lot, as one would expect last season. And yet in the contract, there are bonuses for if he decides to rush for a certain amount of attempts or a certain amount of yardage, you will get a few $100,000 bonus here and $500,000 bonus there. At the end of the day, if you're a fantasy manager, is Deebo still somebody that you're comfortable taking as your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2? Obviously wide receiver 2, but is he somebody that you're comfortable taking at the end of the first round, early second round of your fantasy drafts?
If you took away his rushing touchdowns last year, he, I believe, was still the number 2 wide receiver in fantasy. If you took those away, if it wasn't for Cooper Kupp having the Cooper Kupp season that we all saw, Deebo's the number 1 receiver. And I have not been, to be fair, I have not been the biggest drum banger for Deebo, but it's hard to look past a coach like Shanahan that will put the ball in his hands and put him in a position to win. And I think that contract is a testament to making him happy and letting them know that they appreciate the sacrifices that he makes on his body by being able to do all those things. And his big concern was what? I don't want to get running back money, and become a running back and not have a title and have that cost me in terms of cash flow. And that's what we've seen is the opposite. Them saying, here, keep doing what you're doing. It probably will shorten his career, dynasty-wise. Maybe be careful a little bit if it takes the punishment. But at the end of the day, yeah, I think I'm starting to turn the corner. My only concern is Trey Lance, and I don't think that they're asking Trey to do too much that he's not capable of doing.
No, I 100% agree. For redraft purposes, as much as I like this with Deebo, I am even more in on Brandon Ayuk. Because the price for Deebo is going to go through the roof. People are going to want to pay mid-first round pick value potentially for Deebo Samuel. Ayuk, he's been showing nothing but rapport with Trey Lance the entire training camp. And you saw last year, even with Garoppolo, everybody knew that Brandon Ayuk was in the quote-unquote doghouse for most of the season, didn't really get a lot of targets going his way. But as the season went on, he was the wide receiver who was getting emphasized outside of Deebo Samuel in the passing game. So pretty excited for Brandon Ayuk's value there. Let's go to Minnesota. Let's talk about a tight end that I think all of us, especially in Dynasty, but definitely in redraft, we were kind of hoping would be a sneaky play at the tight end position. And of course, I'm talking about Irv Smith, the now 3rd year tight end for the Minnesota Vikings. Had thumb surgery recently. There is talk that he should be back for week 1. But for those who were listening on Dynasty 365 an hour ago, thumb surgery sounds painful. Catching a football going 50 miles an hour, I really don't know how fast football goes. Let's just say they go 50 miles an hour. And having that hit my surgically repaired thumb, not even a month after surgery, doesn't sound awesome. Bill, what do you make of Irv Smith? Is he still a sneaky tight end that you're kind of targeting, if you don't get one of the big 4?
I don't think so. I just think he's one of them guys. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to fall right for him. There's always going to be something. Plus, you look at that offense, and there's obviously Justin Jefferson. There's Adam Thielen. We know that we've got Dalvin Cook at the backfield. Apparently, he's been running routes as a receiver. I just think you can do better. He's not for me. He's not for me, which is a shame because he's super talented, and I liked him coming out.
Well, you mentioned Dalvin Cook. He's having his own hand issues and arm issues these past few days, coming in and out of practice. So I don't know what Kirk Cousins is doing. He may want to lower the velocity in the ball that he's throwing, but interesting.
Might not get there if he lowers the velocity.
Kirk Cousins is just too much man.
Words that no one has ever said before, but now have been said. Thank you, Tyler. Let's go to Big D. James Washington, Jones fracture. He's out for a significant portion of time. What does this mean for the receiving game? Well, they got one healthy wide receiver in Debo and CeeDee Lamb. They got Dalton Schultz. Nate, who's somebody that people probably aren't thinking about in terms of the receiving game that could come out and be super helpful for fantasy purposes?
Is all you're trying to do is get me to say Michael Gallup when he's healthy? Is that what this is? Is it goading me into saying that?
Maybe.
I ain't falling for your prey. I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. I think this is it could be. Maybe this is the time they go and what's going on with Will Fuller? Does anybody really know?
No, it's Tony Pollard. They've said he's going to run at slot receiver.
Yes.
Like, significantly. People need to go get this guy. If it's a PPR league, he is going to be on the field a lot with Elliott. You know he's going to get carries. He's a talented dude. We saw what he could do in like the pass catching attempts he got last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's Tony Pollard's answer. I mean, obviously Schultz should be also inching up because I think Schultz and Lamb are going to get just peppered with targets. But Pollard is that guy that other than the other two, I'm trying to grab, especially if it's a PPR league.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we had on the Dynasty 365 show is one of the areas that I agree with you 100%, Keith. I think this is a time where both of the two backs can be on the field at once, and Tony Pollard line up in the slot is exactly one of those. I know Jorge loves Michael Gallup, so that was my roundabout way of making sure he knows that I'm still not on board the Michael Gallup
train. Do we have an idea when he's coming back, though?
You know who's on board?
You know who's been on board
the Michael Gallup train? The Dallas Cowboys are giving him that contract.
That's true. They are as crazy as you are and love him, and regardless how many times he scorns you. But no, Keith is exactly right. I think this is my Tony Pollard investments might increase just a little bit.
Nice. Let's go to the Crescent City. I think it's the Crescent City, New Orleans. I hope that's the Crescent City. If not,
the nastiest city.
If Jorge did insult him by calling the wrong names.
Our fans in New Orleans and Louisiana. Thank you very much, Keith.
Fuck you, fans in New Orleans. Sorry, I hate the Saints and I hate New Orleans. Sorry.
That is some Falcons hate coming out.
I do. I can't stand them.
Mr. Cooper. You know what? Because of what you just said and what your hate towards the Saints, let's talk about a Saint who's been coming on and playing pretty well in practice, hasn't played in the NFL in a couple years fully. Let's talk about Michael Thomas. His ADP is still rather low because everyone's concerned with the injury. Is he somebody that, if his ADP continues to stay low, is going to be a league winner for you just because of you drafting him where you're getting him, or are you still having concerns about what he can produce for your fantasy team, given the situation of the coaching staff and the offensive scheme?
Right. If Sean Payton was there, I would be all over. I'd be all over the Saints in general. I think, like, on the offensive side of the ball, it's crazy he leaves, and I think they're as deep as they maybe have been since, like, they won the Super Bowl top to bottom. Because I think Jameis is not a bad quarterback at all. Like, I think you're going to see he's going to put up numbers if he stays. He was putting up numbers last year before he got hurt. So, yeah, I mean, if Thomas is available, you're not going to have to twist my arm to take him. But I am not, like running to make that pick because I am worried about the injury history. I'm also worried about just who's going to get the ball. I do like Thomas obviously a lot early because Kamara's going to miss 6 weeks, or is it 4?
Don't know.
Oh, they still haven't decided. Okay.
It might not be any.
Yeah, they pushed back his court date again, which might actually delay until next year.
Because obviously if he's playing, that's another person in the pass catching. But I mean, yeah, if Thomas continues to be, I've been shocked that he hasn't moved up more. Let's put it this way: I'm high on Olave. I would much rather have Thomas than him if it's a non-dynasty league, just because he's proven. And I mean, he's one of the best route runners in football. You don't forget how to do that, even though you've missed some time.
Very good point. Now let's over to Tampa Bay. Offensive lineman Ryan Jensen out several months. Look, last time I checked, I think it's important for a 45-year-old quarterback to have all the protection he has up front so he doesn't get mangled and, thrown to the ground, and all these weapons that they brought in on offense for the Buccaneers just go to the wayside because who's Kyle Trask? Is that the answer? He's still the backup, right? Kyle Trask, I believe, the Buccaneers' second-year quarterback.
So not Blaine Gabbert.
Oh, it is Blaine Gabbert.
Is it?
Yeah.
Blaine Gabbert.
Oh, really?
Well, that inspires confidence. I mean, now I'm really.
I mean, it makes all the difference.
He can scramble. He can run. No, he can't.
I mean, Brady hasn't missed a start since like 2009, though, that he hasn't been suspended for, right?
Well, don't jinx him. Okay.
I hope I do jinx him. Screw Tom Brady, too, while we're at it.
Wow.
Hey,
love for any
listen,
other
dude,
besides Falcons.
28-3. I have a right to say screw Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, okay? They destroy my football soul.
That is not their fault.
No, your
Yes,
Falcons
it is.
destroyed
It
your
is their
football
fault.
soul. You should take the
Trust me,
animosity.
Shanahan's on the list. There's a lot of guys on the list. But I'm just saying Brady's on there too.
This is wrong.
Well, if that's what is bugging you, what are your thoughts on Julio Jones going to Tampa Bay?
Oh man, don't get me started. He's gonna have a great year. He'll catch like 11 touchdown passes. The dude hadn't caught more than 3 in the last decade. You watch. I'm telling you, he'll be a red zone monster. With Brady.
Can we strike that from the record?
I'm just telling you.
This is a fantasy football
It would be
advice
the
show.
most Falcons thing ever for him to go to Tampa with Brady. And he doesn't put up the big yards, but he's a touchdown machine.
The views expressed by Keith Fleming do not represent fantasyandframes.com.
Nice. Let's over to Charm City. I know that one for a fact. Baltimore. Lamar Jackson, still no progress on a contract. When that contract comes, because it is coming and it's going to be for a lot of money. Nate, let's go to you. Patrick Mahomes, when he got his deal, what was it, like a double-digit year, 10-year deal? Is that something that the Ravens are willing to commit to? You think Lamar Jackson, if you were, let me put it like this. If you were Ravens management and ownership, would you commit that amount of time and money into Lamar Jackson?
And Nate is available for that gig.
What's up?
100%.
I said Nate is available for that gig if anybody's looking for a GM. So
Or an agent, or I take anything. But that's a tough comparable, because the one thing that Mahomes had in his favor at that point is, the postseason success. And I'm not saying that Lamar doesn't have postseason success, but not to that degree. And I don't know if that's going to be, hesitancy and creates hesitancy on Baltimore. But I think he's going to take the bag. I think he's going to get paid to the level of what Patrick Mahomes got. I don't know. Mahomes' contract, the way they structured it, has actually not been the worst case scenario. Granted, it's a lot of money, but the way they have it figured out, they can still reallocate money and do a lot of the positioning for us to be able to continue to put pieces around him. And I don't know. That's a tough. I know Tyler's much more acclimated with contract conversations than I am.
Yeah, so I think Pat Mahomes is a unique example. I don't think anyone is basing their contract off of that. Lamar Jackson, he showed a bit of a proclivity for injury. His health isn't the best. He is one of the most dynamic players in the NFL. I would imagine that when they sign him, it will be a 4, maybe a 5-year extension. He's going to take Kyler Murray's contract and say, give me $1 to $2 million more than that. So we're probably looking at about 4 years, probably a $48 million average annual value on that deal.
So he'll adult size Kyler Murray's kid size contract.
he deserves an adult size Kyler Murray contract. The difference in Mahomes to Lamar is about the same as, in my opinion, Murray to Lamar. I mean, what has Murray done? Nothing. He can't even stay healthy for a season.
He stayed healthy last year. I want to say
his performance. So, and I think that's from him. Again, I'm not a doctor, so but I mean, I think because he's smaller. I'm serious. If you look his numbers each year, they kind of decline as the year goes on. I think that's when the little guy gets banged up. that happens because he's a dude. I mean, for an NFL quarterback, he's a tiny dude.
Yes.
He's really small, but he single-handedly took that team to the playoffs.
Single-handedly?
Yeah.
James Conner had nothing to do with that?
I mean, he was fine. No, I'm saying last year, James Conner, yeah, sure. He had a lot of touchdowns last year. That team would have been a 3 to 4 win team without Kyler Murray.
Didn't they win like 3 games without Murray down the stretch?
I don't remember.
I
Conveniently forgot to not help prove your point.
Exactly.
But speaking of tiny dudes and underdogs, one of our partners here at Fantasy and Frames is Underdog Fantasy. I'm sure you've heard of them before if you play in best ball leagues for any major sport. If you head over there and use the promo code FRAMES, you'll get a 100% match on your deposit up to $100. I'm in at least like 5-6 best ball leagues there with Underdog. I love, draft day. We're all having our draft days for our various redraft leagues this month and early September. Draft day is one of the best parts of the year outside of winning a fantasy football championship. And with Underdog Fantasy, you get to experience draft day every single time you sign up for a league. They have leagues that are like $3 all the way up to $25, $100, whatever your level of comfort is when it comes to gambling. They have that there for you. A lot of, like I said, for every sport you can do these best ball leagues, but obviously we're talking NFL. So if you just want to deal with the draft and not have to worry about any in-season management, Underdog Fantasy is for you. So head over there, use the promo code FRAMES for an 100% match on your deposit up to $100. And also talking about underdogs, let's get into our NFC East preview here. We're going to talk about some quarterbacks that in the NFC East that some of them do have some underdog aspects to them. And let's start with my team. Let's talk about the Commanders. If you head over to fantasyandframes.com and you've read our NFC East divisional preview, you'll have seen that, Keith, you talked about quarterbacks here. You profiled all of these quarterbacks. Let's talk about Carson Wentz. What are your thoughts on Carson Wentz this year? Is he one of those guys that, could provide streaming potential, or is he somebody that you're looking at maybe as a quarterback in your late rounds that you're starting, or is he somebody you're just leaving on the waiver wire?
No, I mean, I think he definitely needs to be drafted. He's a much better quarterback than what Washington has had since Kirk Cousins. And again, we all like to pick on Wentz, and he was terrible down the stretch for the Colts. But I mean, 27 touchdowns and 7 picks. I think he was like the 12th highest fantasy scoring quarterback last year. And Terry McLaurin is the best receiver he's ever been paired with, like at this point in their career. And that's going to be an explosive pairing. He loves to throw to tight ends. Logan Thomas is a good to tight end. His second and third most targeted players in Indy were both running backs. Washington has a plethora of running backs who are good pass catchers. And Washington, sorry, Jorge, is not going to be very good. And I always look for those quarterbacks that are down a lot and throwing a lot. To me, that's the kind of guys you look for late in it. I just think that he is, again, what is he, 26th, 27th right now for the QBs? That's too low. Like, I'm sorry, again, Mac Jones going ahead of him. Like, he's going to air it out more than Mac Jones is. I can guarantee you that. I trust him more than I do Davis Mills. He's thrown at least 27 touchdowns the last 3 seasons that he's started a majority of the games, 14 or more. I just think that for where he's going, it's a good value. And who knows, maybe he has, a year like he did in 2017 where he, catches fire. But, he's limited, but I think he should definitely be rostered. And he's somebody that you can kind of plug and play depending on matchups if you don't get one of those top quarterbacks.
And let's think about like when he had his, year 2017, where he was the leading candidate for MVP, as well as his subsequent years in Philadelphia. Who were his wide receivers? A broken Alshon Jeffrey and Mr. I Can't Catch Nelson Aguilar. I think this is I think this is the best supporting cast at wide receiver that he's had his entire career. So it'll be interesting to see what he has to do, or interesting to see what he does this year.
Especially if Samuel can stay healthy, which I think that's really the biggest key. They wanted him to be a big part of this offense, and he just, what was it, like 37%, I think, of the snaps last year, Jorge? I don't think he played in any game for more than 37% of the snaps. It was, if anything, it was very minimal. Let's head over to
the New York Giants, talk about their quarterback situation. Bill, let's go to you for a second. I want to get your opinion here because you're a Buffalo Bills fan. Obviously, you're wearing a Buffalo Bills shirt for those who are not watching. And you are very familiar with Brian Daboll and what he's been able to do for Josh Allen's development. What are your realistic expectations from a general perspective, but then ultimately a fantasy perspective for Daniel Jones this year?
I quite like Daniel Jones. Just as the player, I think he's got some talent. I think he's got an arm. He's mobile. He can move. I just don't think that Brian Daboll is this miracle maker that he's being made out to be. I feel like people underestimate how much of a unicorn Josh Allen is, and I think people just automatically assume, oh, Brian Daboll's going to New York or to New Jersey, and Daniel Jones is going to have that sort of upside that we saw Josh Allen have. I just don't know if that's the case. They've got a new GM in town, a new head coach with a quarterback that's never proved that he's the guy. What typically happens in the second year is that guy gets replaced by the guy. So I'm expecting maybe a little bit of a performance jump, but then it equally wouldn't surprise me if we saw him replaced halfway through the season by Tyrod Taylor. He's a guy that I'm not confident either way, and because of that, I'm staying away.
You mentioned being replaced next year with the 2023 draft class. A quarterback is supposed to be pretty talented. One of the things I saw from one of the pressers for Brian Daboll was that even though you have to be careful with the ball, he preaches to his quarterbacks, I want you to be aggressive. I want you to throw it downfield. Even if you're not seeing it, I want you to throw it. I want you to be aggressive. This kind of seems like a baptism under fire situation here with the Giants with Daniel Jones. Like they're just going to say, hey, you need to do everything or we're going to replace you at the end of the season. And that's just
if you can't, CJ Stroud can.
But you know what they've done, though, is they've also said, hey, we're not going to allow you to be set on fire. We're going to actually give you an offensive line to protect you. And I think that's going to probably play more of a factor than anything else that we've seen addition-wise. Granted, yes, it's great to have a healthy Saquon. It's great to have healthy wide receivers. But this offensive line giving them some time because let's play a game here real quick. Through the first two seasons between Daniel Jones and Josh Allen, who has a higher completion percentage or who had?
Daniel
Jones.
Great Nate.
62% to 56%. Who had more passing yards per game?
Great Nate.
221 to 184.
Better downfield passer.
Touchdown interception ratio was 35 to 22 for Daniel Jones versus 30 to 21 for Josh Allen. And Daniel Jones had an 84.1% passer rating to a 78.2. That all being said, I would take Josh Allen 1,000 times to 1 over Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's something to be said about some time and weapons. And we saw that if you go back to 2019 with Daniel Jones, is that in that season, in 13 games, he had an 87.7% quarterback rating. It's not going to set the world on fire, but he had over 3,000 yards, over 60% completion percentage, and a 24 to 12 touchdown interception. The key there, again, sack 38 times, sack 45 times the next year. Give him some opportunity, and I think all that comes to mind is him scrambling and having greener pastures and falling flat on his face. That's what we think of with Daniel Jones. And that's the unfortunate, yet at the same time, Nate, where do you have Daniel Jones ranked? Oh, I don't know. He's my number 23 quarterback. So it's not like I'm wearing a Daniel Jones jersey that I'm going to show off right now. But I think that there is a chance in Superflex leagues, there might be an opportunity for Daniel Jones to be a decent third option that you filter in that might have some upside.
I think this is the thing that people are going to keep on doing, though. They're going to keep on putting up Josh's first 2 years in the league and going, well, this guy did it. You can do it. This guy did it. You can do it. And I think we're just going to see that not everyone is Josh Allen.
Yeah, but you also didn't have the clapper calling plays for the last 2 years, which has a big part, too. I mean, that's one of the worst offensive play callers in football, and Jason Garrett. It's really good not to have that guy calling your plays. It was really rough. Like, he's had no time the last 2 years.
Let's move on to Philadelphia and Dallas. Tyler, let's go to you now. I see these two teams as mirror images of each other from a year ago to this year. Last year for the Dallas Cowboys, you had Gallup, to start the season at least. You had Gallup, you had Amari Cooper, you had Dalton Schultz, you had Zeke, you had Pollard, you had Dak returning. everyone watched Week 1 versus the Buccaneers on that Thursday night and how both teams just took it to each other, how the Cowboys looked great. There are so many weapons on this Cowboys offense, and now you look at what's happening with Dallas, the injuries at the wide receiver position. It kind of looks a little decimated here. Now you go to the flip side to Philadelphia, who I think personally they're going to win the division this year. You look at, you have question marks at running back, but you got Devonta Smith, you have AJ Brown, you have Dallas Goedert, and it all hinges on Jalen Hurts. So I want to ask you, if you had to draft one of these quarterbacks, let's assuming that they're at relatively the same ADP. Currently, Dak is at QB8 when Jalen Hurts is at QB7. You had to pick one of them. Who would you pick?
I'm going to take the rushing upside and Jalen Hurts, especially since he just got his brand new shiny weapon in A.J. Brown. Dak has built his fantasy value off of throwing. He throws the ball a lot. I mean, if you look over the past couple of years, I think he averages at least 36 attempts per game, which is an absolutely insane number. The bell curve of attempts per game is right around 32 to 33. He's easily in the top 10% of that bell curve. And without Michael Gallup, without James Washington, without that receiver support, it's going to be a little difficult to put up those kind of points with 36 attempts per game. And I'll take Jalen Hurts in that rushing upside.
All right, so let's stick with go to the running back position now. And as you're saying, the expectations for Dak Prescott are going down. Does that automatically mean that both running backs for the Dallas Cowboys can feast? Can Zeke feast concurrently with Tony Pollard? We talked about Pollard earlier in the show, about the PPR upside, the reception upside. Are we comfortable with Zeke? There's been a lot of talk this offseason. Oh, well, he was injured, but he still finished as a top 10 or 12 running back. He's healthy this year. He puts out all the cool videos of him working out. Keith, let's go to you. What are your thoughts at the running back position? Can both guys feast in this offense?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not down on Dak though. I know a lot of people are. Unless Mike McCarthy and him are lying about him being a year away from that horrific leg injury and moving again like he did before. Do not forget that Dak was not the thrower he was before that leg injury that he is now. And if he can then run for 30 to 40 yards a game, which he did, I think it was like 40% of his games before that leg injury, he could all of a sudden become a completely different player. And he may have to scramble a lot more because, he's going to only have a few receivers to throw to. But yeah, I just trust this. I mean, they run the ball. I know we talked about how much they pass, but when they get to the red zone, Zeke is going to score touchdowns. That's why until Zeke is not the starter, I'm always, unless his just draft position is insane, I think he's always usually a pretty good value. And then Pollard with the, receiving, particularly in the PPR, there's plenty for them both to feast. But I think Dak could be in for a humongous year if he truly does run. Like Mike McCarthy has said publicly, we're going to move him on the run for throws. We're going to let him have more run plays. And Dak's a good athlete, and it takes time to – his leg snapped 2 years ago, so it makes sense you want him to be, conservative with him that first year. But if he gets back to the pre-injury Dak running, or even 85-90% of that, that's an extra 2-3 points a game. And that's huge. He's already scoring, 22, 23 a game.
Let's go to Philadelphia now. Let's go back to Nate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is like a slam dunk spike, easy spike in volleyball here, but we look at Miles Sanders, and let me go off of Fantasy Pros ADP currently the running back 28. He's going around the likes of Kareem Hunt, Rashad Penny, Tony Pollard, Damian Harris. Would you have any of those running backs over Miles Sanders?
Rashad Penny. I would.
Yeah.
I would be close. Tony Pollard is close, but Miles Sanders, the one thing that stands out to me, of course, is the same thing that everybody's going to point to. 137 rushing attempts and no touchdowns. It's just that's not a traditional statistic that you see, and you think that positive regression has to be in his favor. He had 20 rushing attempts in the red zone and no touchdowns. It just goes on and on. 10 within the 10, 0. So I can't think the efficiency can be as bad. It can be. We've all learned that. But I believe that we also are pretty safe to assume, show of hands, anybody think he's going to have over 130 attempts and 0 touchdowns again?
I hope so. The fans will be booing in the middle of games. If not, they've proved that.
Gotcha. So screw you, New Orleans. We hate Kyler Murray. Don't really care for.
I don't hate Kyler Murray. I was just saying he's not as good as Lamar.
And
I'll admit who
Philadelphia,
I hate. Brady was on the hate list.
Gotcha.
Hey,
That's right, Brady. Yeah, fuck you, Tom Brady.
Let me throw in there just about the rushing touchdowns in Philadelphia. You know how we always talk about the Bills and Josh Allen's going to vulture the touchdowns in the red zone. Jalen Hurts had more rushing touchdowns last year than Josh Allen has in his entire career.
Wow. That's a great stat.
In a single season in his entire career.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think he had that many.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No,
that makes more sense.
Yeah. Sorry. But
Still a good stat.
That's where your rushing touchdowns in Philly are going. You know, they're not magically going to Kenneth Gainwell or Boston Scott, where they were a couple times.
I was gonna say in daily fantasy, we were like, Boston Scott, are you serious? This dude wasn't even supposed to start.
He had 7. Yeah, Boston Scott had 7 last year, which is crazy in the red zone.
I wouldn't rely on any of those guys to have a bunch of rushing touchdowns because Jalen Hurts is going to take them.
Yeah, and when you can't throw the ball, you haven't got much option but to run it, have you? So
that is.
You
This kind of hurts his only
Devontae
choice.
Smith and AJ Brown, though.
That's talking awfully big from a guy who has a quarterback who couldn't throw the ball 2 years ago.
Josh could always throw the ball.
I
Not
didn't know
always to the
where.
right person. That's the problem.
Touche.
Bill, let's go with you back to New York, or as you said, New Jersey. I'm going to list you 3 running backs here in ADP order. At 13, Leonard Fournette. 14, Saquon Barkley. 15, David Montgomery. Would you take Saquon Barkley over Leonard Fournette and David Montgomery?
Yeah, I would. I'd take him over both. The upside's there. With Leonard Fournette, is he gonna do what he did last year? I don't know. Apparently he's coming to camp. He doesn't look great. I don't know whether to take that, that with a pinch of salt. But for me, the upside you get with Saquon Barkley is a top 3 a top 3 running back in fantasy if he can stay healthy. So just on upside, I'm taking that. I'm taking that guy. I'm taking Saquon Barkley.
All right, and now I'll wrap us up here with the Washington Commanders. Look, there are 3 names you need to know in Washington's backfield: Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick, and Brian Robinson. There's only one name that you need to concern yourself with by season's end, and that's Brian Robinson.
Ooh.
I am not a fan of Antonio Gibson. I've never been a fan of Antonio Gibson. Staying healthy has never been a fan of Antonio Gibson. He's already banged up in training camp. J.D. McKissick they brought back as the scat back just to catch all the passes out of the backfield. And, yes, the passing volume will be there. I don't know how many targets with all the weapons they have at wide receiver can they really allocate to a running back. But Brian Robinson, Alabama, just a hard-nosed runner who is deceptively elusive for his size. I think he is going to be the future of the Washington running game. He's been taking how many years into the future will he be the starter? That's a different story. He was used a lot when he was in college. So the attempts will rack up sooner rather than later. But for now, for this season, I could definitely see Brian Robinson being the running back you'd want to roster late season. So definitely somebody who I would invest a late round pick versus trying to go after an Antonio Gibson. Bill, you looked at me with like, what the hell are you smoking, Jorge? Why do you think Antonio Gibson is somebody that people should pay attention to?
Antonio Gibson, what's he, RB20? His first season he finished as RB13 or RB12, and last season he was RB11 or around there. So he's, we've got precedent last 2 seasons that he can be a running back 1, a low end running back 1. He's a home hitter. I mean, I watched him against the Bills. Take a pass and just take it to the house. No one could get near him. No one could tackle him. I just think people are massively overreacting to this Brian Robinson draft pick. Like for me, it's a later round running back. And I've seen it from Antonio Gibson. I've seen the guy do it in the NFL. Give me that over, oh, this guy came from Bama and we got him in the, second round or third round or whatever it was. I'll take what I know. And I know that Antonio Gibson's a good NFL running back.
Tyler, what about you?
Plus or minus? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nate. Go ahead.
I was just saying, if J.D. McKissic was healthy last year, and I am neither for or against Antonio Gibson as far as this argument's concerned, but with the healthy J.D. McKissic, do you think Antonio Gibson finishes within the RB20 landscape still?
No.
If
You're
Drew
saying if he
Bledsoe
stays
doesn't
healthy?
get injured, is Tom Brady Tom Brady?
If McKissic was healthy last season, do we think that the lack of J.D. McKissic, because if you look, the one thing Antonio Gibson did that I think helped elevate his value a little bit was when they were trailing in games, which was often
You're saying
he was a heavy recipient of touches.
right.
And I wonder if they would supplement in deficit games J.D. McKissic more so than Antonio Gibson. Would the snap share be compromised a little bit, I guess, is my question. And that's the only concern I have with Gibson is I don't know. The staff doesn't seem to want to give him the keys to do what he was supposed to be doing, which was to be this receiver that was going to be converted into a running back. And yet he ceded opportunity share in terms of receptions and receiving game. And then they bring in a guy who's qualified to really get goal line work and work within the 20s. And I don't know what that leaves Antonio Gibson. Is that for him to be from 20 to 20, not within the 20s, but, red zone for Brian Robinson. But is that Antonio Gibson from within the 20s? And if that's the case, that scares me as my RB2 because I don't see a high touchdown upside and I don't see a high reception upside. But I like the talent. That's my biggest bugaboo. He's what are they not seeing that we're seeing? Bill, that's what I don't get.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I always found it strange that they didn't use him as a pass catcher. That they keep on, third down. They got to have it. J.D. McKissic is on the field, and it just in my head it didn't make any sense. But I like the talent. I trust the talent, and I'm not out on him like everybody else is because Brian Robinson's been drafted. Like. They gave him the ball a lot in the red zone last year. Like, okay, but I expect Brian Robinson to eat into that a bit, but the guy's still a rookie. But I don't know. Like, I'm gonna need to see it before I fade Gibson.
I think though, to Jorge's point, he's always banged up. Like I'm not because he does typically gut it and play through stuff, but you know how it is in those situations. If you have a guy that you picked in the third round. Say Gibson missed a game or two, Robinson rushed for 100 yards twice, and all of a sudden it's not his job anymore. So I understand it's your running back too. And I'm not saying one way or the other, but I'm kind of in the same deal. If he falls a little bit below his ADP, I would be delighted to get him, but I'm definitely not going to go too much above it to take him in any drafts. But he is going to catch passes. Wentz, again, 2 and 3 targets on the Colts last year with Jonathan Taylor and Naheem Hines. So he likes to throw to running back. So for Gibson, McKissic, Robinson, whoever it is, they're going to get targets with Carson Wentz at quarterback.
Mm-hmm. All right, Keith, let's stay with you and let's talk about some targets. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, wide receiver now. You talked about the wide receivers in the NFC East Fantasy Football Preview over at Fantasy and Frames. What are your thoughts here?
I freaking love Terry McLaurin. It is ridiculous. He is wide receiver 14. I'm sorry, it's going to take just a second, but I have to pull up. I went back and looked up because this is one of those exercises sometimes you need to do in fantasy football and stuff when you're doing research. I was like, I know he's had some bad quarterbacks, but how bad were they? And when you go back and look at the names, it is just absolutely outrageous. I think it was. I'm sorry, of course I can't find it right now, but the quarterback that he's had started the most was he's had Heineke, Haskins. It's unbelievable. And this dude's almost put 1,000 yards up all 3 seasons. He's been one of the top guys in the league and yards per attempt. He's had nobody that could throw a good deep ball, which is really what he's most explosive about. Like he is good after the catch, but he's also a real down the field just threat. And with Wentz isn't it? He's an above average, really good deep field passer. I just think McLaurin is going to have a monster season. I like the rookie that they drafted, but again, rookies, it's hit or. I just think this year, especially Logan Thomas is coming off injury. McLaurin is going to see a ton of targets. He's got the most talented quarterback with him. He is one of the most talented dudes in the league. And he got such a huge upgraded quarterback. He should be higher than 14th. He is definitely a wide receiver 1 in my book. And I think his touchdowns are going to go up because I think he only had 5 last year, having at least, I think, 6 or 7 the 2 previous years. It was quarterback play. He is one, in my opinion, the guys that I don't understand why he's so low.
Oh, that's a good point. Tyler, let's get back to you. Let's talk about the New York Giants wide receiver core. Consisting, in my opinion, of 1, but I could be wrong. If you had to pick a wide receiver from the Giants to draft this year, who are you going after?
I have always been a big fan of Kenny Golladay. I think he's a fantastic 50-50 ball receiver. I think he's a great boundary receiver. I think he can go over the middle really well. All of that said, and actually, he has a chance to really succeed this year because Daniel Jones is a good deep ball thrower. All that said, I like Kadarius Toney at their price. Toney's going at wide receiver 51.
Outrageous.
Golladay at wide receiver 56. I mean, one of these guys is going to be a steal. Not both of them. That Daniel Jones doesn't have that in him. But I will take the physical gifts of Kadarius Toney. Just watching him play at times last year. I mean, he could make you miss him in a phone booth. Tony.
Do they still have those, by the way?
Yeah,
that's a great question. Bill's like, "What's a phone booth?"
We got phone booths.
You got the red ones still.
We got
right?
they got them. They got rid of them. Put some
Powers
orange.
gets downstairs.
Yeah.
The only phone booth I can think of is at Harry Potter World at Universal, which is supposed to be mirroring London there. So yeah.
Nate, let's go to you. Philadelphia Eagles, Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown. Let's go to A.J. Brown for a second. Wide receiver 9 currently. Excuse me. Wide receiver 11 ADP. A lot of people are out on him or at his price because of Jalen Hurts. Can Jalen Hurts deliver the ball to him? Yada, yada, yada. Are you concerned with that, or do you think this is something that people are overblowing?
I mean, I don't think shouldn't be something to pay attention to. Clearly, A.J. Brown is an imposing beast. I mean, if you look at the one area that I think that is going to bode in his favor is the contested catch rate, because Jalen Hurts, his money throws or his on-target throws is lacking comparatively speaking. Ryan Tannehill had one, aspect is that he was definitely a much more accurate passer, I think is safe to say. Now, can Jalen Hurts turn into one? Sure. I think anything's possible. But likely what we're going to see A.J. Brown have to try to take advantage of, like I said, that conversion of those contested catches. And last year, if you look, he was, 52%, which was in the top 10 of receivers that had at least what I would say qualified attempts. And I believe that raises his floor just a little bit. My biggest concern probably is going to be the fact that I think Philadelphia realizes that if they run the ball, they can actually win football games. And I'm not saying that they're going to completely abandon the pass, but they didn't really have much of a passing game last year, realistically. I mean, would Hurts have 16 touchdowns? It's not as if, but
except for when they were playing the Falcons.
Exactly.
But that week 1.
But that's a gimme game. Come on. I mean, let's be honest.
Ooh, burn.
You're going on his list.
We haven't been a top 15 defense in 20 years. So,
The good news is you have A.J. Terrell, and that will improve Richie Grant. We're not going to get into the IDP and defensive side of it, but the Falcons will be better. That being said, I haven't been drafting A.J. Brown nearly where he's been going. In my rankings overall, he's at the end of my first tier. He's my 12. I split hairs between him and Deontay Johnson. And I know that's weird with him holding in, but that's about where I stand. I think it's going to take some of the big plays for A.J. Brown to really have those super big weeks.
Nice. And I'll round us off here in Dallas. I mean, there's only one real wide receiver to talk about, and that's CeeDee Lamb.
I thought you were going to say Michael Gallup.
I did too.
Oh, man.
Well, that would have been the obvious slow pitch underhand toss. I was not going to hit out of the park. But Michael Gallup's there too, and he is the best wide receiver in all of football. Just saying. No, just kidding. So if you head over to fantasyandframes.com and click on our rankings, you can check out all of our rankings, both on offense and defense, broken down into tiers, like Nate was alluding to. We talk about CeeDee Lamb. He's in my second tier of wide receivers, right behind Devontae Adams at wide receiver 6 overall. His ADP is also coincidentally at wide receiver 6. Wide receivers going around him: Tyreek Hill, Deebo Samuel. Tyler, would you rather have Deebo Samuel or Tyreek Hill over CeeDee Lamb, or is CeeDee Lamb the guy that you want out of the three?
CeeDee Lamb. And Tyreek Hill's not close.
Nope.
None of those guys are close.
Debo is.
No. I think he's going to be the 2 or 3rd best receiver. He's going to be unleashed this year. I mean, with what he's done for, 19, 20%, target share is pretty impressive. I don't think people realize he could see, especially with injuries now, up to 26, 27% this year.
Oh, I'm not trying to cheapen what CD is going to do this year.
You're just big on D-Bay. I got you.
Yeah, I've got him projected for a 28% target share. He is going to be a monster. He should easily be the wide receiver 3 drafted, and I wouldn't have a real problem with someone taking him over Cooper Kupp. I love Kupp, but I would not have that issue. I think CeeDee Lamb is going to be targeted a lot, often, and he's going to have a true breakout season.
We're going to put a poll on the Fantasy and Frames Twitter account, which you can find at Fantasy and Frames. Who would you rather have, Cooper Kupp or CeeDee Lamb? I don't think it's as much as a slam dunk in the Kupp direction as I'm kind of alluding to right here.
I do.
Yeah. I know where I'm voting already.
I was with you, Tyler, and then you said Cooper Kupp. Whoa, wait a minute now.
All right, Tyler, rapid fire. Let's talk these tight ends before we get into some IDP with Nate and I. Dallas, Dalton Schultz. Let's go through all these. Let's just go on. Dalton Schultz. I'll give it whatever value he's at, or
yeah, give me, man. We don't know when Michael Gallup's going to come back. James Washington is out for the foreseeable future, maybe the whole season. Tony Pollard is probably the most likely guy to get a lot of targets. Dalton Schultz is going to push for an 18, 19% target share again this year, and he's going to start pushing double-digit touchdowns too. I don't think Dalton Schultz is a super dynamic player because he's not, but his volume is going to be out of this world.
Let's now do a comparison. Let's go to Philadelphia and Washington. Let's just say we have a healthy Logan Thomas, who at the end of 2019 was floating around tight end 1 numbers. He didn't play a lot last year because of injury. When he did, in half PPR scoring, he was giving you over 12 fantasy points per game. He's still recovering from his ACL. But let's say in a perfect world, both were healthy. Would you rather have Logan Thomas for the entire season or Dallas Goedert?
Oh, Dallas. Oh, really? Dallas Goedert for me.
Logan Thomas is a beast, man. It's a DFS, and again, I'm DFS, so it's a little bit different. But game to game, what he did in 2019, and then when he missed a little bit this year, and again, he's somebody that excels at down the field passing. That's what Wentz does. I got to see that he's healthy. I understand for the target volume and everything, but Thomas can put up big stat lines and in a hurry. And I just don't trust a rookie or Curtis Samuel to, be that number 2 target behind Terry McLaurin. So I think that there is an opportunity for him where you got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith in front of Goddard. I think Goddard's going to see a decrease in his targets this year.
I don't agree with Devontae Smith over Dallas Goedert, but I'm right there with you on Logan Thomas. I wrote that in our NFC East preview. I went over the tight ends. I said Logan Thomas there is a very realistic road to Logan Thomas being the number 2 target on this team.
Yeah. The only thing that concerns me with Logan Thomas is in the yards per route run. Is as explosive as it is. I don't know how efficient that metric is, that it's sustainable, because if he's, where the last 2 real full seasons that he's played, or at least whatever healthy seasons you want to call them, he was 41st and 22nd amongst tight ends. And so it worries me that you're getting big production out of a small opportunity, and that doesn't always translate. But again, in a DFS situation, you only need that 1 week, whereas Goddard, to me, feels like I have him 7, and I have Goddard 7. And I have Logan Thomas I have him at 16 right now, but a lot of that's health concern.
And that's kind of what I mean is for tight ends for me, I look at it that there's 5 that I really want.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I don't like any of those guys in the 6 to 10 range. Maybe except for I think Fryermuth might be now like in that top 10, but yeah. I just think that there's guys that you can get later that have just as much, if not more upside than the guys that you have listed there that, I mean, again, no offense to Dawson Knox, Dallas Goedert, all those guys. There's so many weapons on those teams that I just can't count on that they're going to be a focal part of their offense week in and week out, to where Cole Kmet, Pat Fryermuth, like these dudes, they're going to be week after week because of lack of, weapons. Yeah. They're going to get a lot of targets.
All right. And Bill, let's go to you. Let's talk about the best tight end in the NFC East that nobody's talking about, Mr. Ricky Seals-Jones. The floor is yours.
Oh God! No.
That's all you need to hear about Ricky Seals-Jones.
They haven't got a tight end. They still haven't got a tight end. Ricky Seals-Jones is not going to do anything. Yeah, I'm not interested in Giants tight ends.
Fair enough. All right, let's go to some IDP now. Hey, let's talk some linebackers, and we ranked over on the NFC East preview over at fantasyframes.com. Micah Parsons, Cole Holcomb, Blake Martinez, TJ Edwards. For those who are interested in our rankings for IDP, head over to fantasyandframes.com. Keep in mind that these rankings, we are both a part of the Fantasy Pros ECR rankings competition, so we're tailing our rankings based off of the scoring settings there. We totally recommend Fantasy and Frames IDP scoring also, which is what we're using in the 4-Eyed Championship charity tournament. But let's get back to these rankings. Parsons, Holcomb, Martinez, Edwards. If you had to pick one, who would you pick, Nate?
It's actually not as easy as it sounds. I think a lot of people would assume I'm just going to go straight to Micah Parsons, and that would still be my answer, just because I think the ceiling is higher, especially if we see some concerns with lack of pass rush for Dallas, that they could deploy Micah Parsons. And he said right now he wants to break the single season sack record. He wants to beat what he did last year. Now, is that doable? Probably not. Most likely Dallas would be in a bad spot if they had to move him from linebacker to more of an edge rusher, pass rushing scenario. But the ceiling is there. I mean, the guy, as a rookie, to finish third in our scoring, top 10 and about top 6 in about every scoring metric you can think of, it's phenomenal. He's this uber talented athlete, and my number 2 would be Blake Martinez, just from the consistency that he's shown.
All right, let's go to and of course, you want to read more about these linebackers, head over to fantasyandframes.com today. Check out the preview of the NFC East, as well as listen to our Shoot the Gap podcast, which is our IDP dedicated podcast hosted by Mr. Nate Markham. Let's go now to defensive back. We only have 3 here because we kind of are saying the Philadelphia Eagles and defensive back are not synonymous with one another. So we're just going to avoid that altogether. And let's talk about Jaron Curse for the Dallas Cowboys, Cameron Curl of the Washington Commanders, and Xavier McKinney of the New York Giants. Yesterday we were guesting on another podcast, Nate. You were waxing poetic over Xavier McKinney. Is he still the one out of the 3 here that you're kind of going over and saying, I want to draft this guy?
Yeah, he is. And I love Jaron Curse. I do. They're 2 different type of players. That's the crazy thing with IDP. Jaron Curse is at the line of scrimmage, in the box, just the run stopper, the heavy hitter. And Xavier McKinney is the all-around type player. Definitely plays a little bit deep, more so, not a little bit. He definitely plays deep, but he's a ball hawk. And the one thing that he showed with his time in Alabama was that he can do both. He's uber athletic in his really first healthy season. I mean, because in 2020, he played 6 games. So last year, 93 tackles, 11 passes defense, 5 interceptions. And I mean, the 5 interceptions were the 3rd most in the league last year. And I think that there's going to be a chance. I talked about this yesterday. I think this makes perfect sense, is that with Logan Ryan and James Bradbury gone, in this new Wink Martindale system, there's a good opportunity for opposing teams to try to challenge them through the air. And Xavier McKinney playing that center field role will 100% be an opportunity and a good buy to lead the league in interceptions. Couple that, pair that with an 80+ tackle ups, floor, and the pass is defensed, and you have a legitimate top 5 safety here in the making.
Listen to Nate, folks. He was top 4 in IDP rankings for a reason. Let's round us out for defensive lineman / edge. We have ranked DeMarcus Lawrence, Chase Young, which now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know why I put Chase Young in here, but I'll get to that in a little bit. And Hassan Reddick, and of course, but we also left off the Giants. We have Kayvon Thibodeau, the rookie from Oregon. We have Azeez Ojulari, second-year player. If you had to pick one of these defensive ends to fill your defensive lineman spot, who are you going after, Nate?
I'm going to take Hassan Reddick of the ones mentioned. I think DeMarcus Lawrence has the best chance to have the biggest turnaround from last year, the comeback player type role. But Hassan Reddick, you can throw him, a defensive line. He's a linebacker or edge or outside linebacker by definition. But as a defensive line, he's been fantastic the last couple of years. First 3 years weren't exactly anything to shake a stick at, but now that he's been in a role where it's been conducive and they've highlighted his abilities and what he can do best, what we've seen is in 2020, 63 tackles, 12.5 sacks, 18 quarterback hits, 4 passes defense, 5 forced fumbles. Same thing in 2021, opposite Brian Burns, 11 sacks, 68 tackles, 18 quarterback hits. And then if you look at the most sacks over the past 2 seasons, including total pass rush snaps, Hassan Reddick's 5th behind the names TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, Aaron Donald, Hassan Reddick. If you're in that company, that's a company I like to be in presence of.
Very nice. And if you want to read more about these edge rushers in the NFC East, head over to fantasyandframes.com today. And with that, that wraps up our NFC East primer. Thank you all very much. Let's go around the frames. Dynasty Bill FF, that's where you can find him on Twitter. Bill, thank you very much for joining us today. And we really got to thank the espresso, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's not me. It's just an espresso machine out the back.
Try C4 Dynasty, Bill. I'm seriously, energy drink, dude. It is.
I'm gonna go next week
for like 12 hours. Try one of those bad boys.
He's just telling you to take crack.
I actually thought that maybe I had been slipped some crack when I drank it. I was like, what is going on?
Mr. Keith Fleming, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
As always, thank you very much. Tyler, thank you for joining us. And everybody else, thank you very much for joining us here on Fourth and Frames. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. And we will get to that. We'll get to more next week. Next week, we have a very special guest. It is Fantasy Football Expo Week. We have the creator of the Fantasy Football Expo, Bob Lung, joining us to talk about just what Expo Week is all about, Expo Weekend is all about, and just talk about, why it is such a great time. I'll leave it at that. So for Nate, for Tyler, for Bill, for Keith, I am Jorge. We will see you next time, folks.
The Rock has 2 words of advice for you. Simply put, get ready.